Hey, pod people, bringing you an episode today with my guest, Julia Geer, who is currently my AI teacher. I met Julia. She was a student in one of the Ayurveda schools where I teach. And that was a few years ago. She started recently talking about offering a program to help small business solopreneurs like myself, especially in the wellness space, to use AI to kind of automate aspects of your business. So I've been kind of dragging my feet on learning how to use AI, something like ChatGPT, which you've probably heard of at this point. What it seems like to me as a content creator, an author, someone who does rely on social media and newsletters and things like this podcast to reach people, to communicate with people, and to advertise my services and products, I felt like it's going to get more and more difficult to sort of keep up in the marketplace today without using AI, because AI is starting to be a part of a lot of the tools that I use, like Meta on Facebook, like Canva, the design tool, you can use to make social media graphics, as well as PowerPoints for teaching and all sorts of other things. So I was wanted to learn how to use it, but didn't want to DIY that. I just felt really overwhelmed. I'm not someone who loves computer time, friends. Welcome to Everyday Ayurveda with Kate, a podcast that translates ancient wisdom for modern lives. I'm your host, Kate O'Donnell. I've been living and teaching Ayurveda, India's traditional medicine, for over 25 years, and I've authored 4 best-selling books on bringing Ayurveda practices into our lives. If you're tired of battling digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, menopause symptoms, or are seeking a deeper spiritual connection and purpose, you're in the right place. This podcast is for you, offering practical, accessible advice to help you heal through diet, optimize your daily routines, and enhance your overall well-being. Follow this space for insights on a diet that heals, strategies for better digestion, sleep, hormone health, and direction for finding a deep sense of meaning and purpose. Join me, my pod people, for this empowering journey into self-care and self-discovery. Together, we'll explore how to bring balance and vitality into your everyday life. Let's do this. Hi, pod people. This is Kate here with Everyday Ayurveda, and I'm here today with Julia Geer, hi, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We're actually in person. We're broadcasting live from Higgins Beach today, so we're pretty happy about that. Julia, as I explained to you already, has been a teacher to me of incorporating AI in my business. And so what we want to talk about today with Julia is I'm very curious about how you got here, how you ended up doing what you're doing, and sort of having this blend of, I think your company, Gear Shift, is about helping people use AI to live healthy lifestyles.
That's right.
Yeah, so that fascinates me. So I'm like, oh, so what we want to share with you guys today is how can we do that? Like, how can you use AI at home? I'm not very savvy in this either. So I'm also looking for some info. So we want to send you home with some take homes. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us and we'll get to it right after this. Then we have an ad roll. And now, okay. Yeah. All right. So Julia, I know you as a yoga person. We met at Kripalu Yoga Center. I also know you as someone who's worked in healthcare, worked with startups. Can you tell us, how did you get so smart? What do you specialize in, I guess?
Yeah.
And then how did you end up with this blend of wellness and technology?
Great question. So I went to a school in upstate New York that some of you may be familiar with. It's called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And by accident, I majored in a business school that was focused on technology, management technology. And I was also an athlete. So I swam and I played lacrosse in college, and I had shoulder surgery my sophomore year. And that's when I found yoga. And because I was in the Albany area, it happened to be Kripalu Yoga.
Of course.
Of course, although I didn't know what that really meant at the time. But what I did notice was after my year of rehabbing my shoulder, my focus was better, my grades were better, my athletic performance was better, and I was training less than I ever had before, but I had incorporated yoga into a regular, practice and part of my training. And that was what started the inquiry of like something is really unique and different about this, umbrella of practices. And so that kind of always stuck with me as I graduated and went into being a commercial person for technology companies. And my grandfather was a doctor and my grandmother was a nurse. And so I'd always been attracted to the healthcare field, except more on the how can you bring technologies to market in healthcare to help enable things like access to medicine or services or make things easier. And in that journey, I stumbled into the use of artificial intelligence in clinical care and healthcare, which in 2016 culminated. And it's so funny because it's like kind of the evolution of artificial intelligence happened by accident in the evolution of my experience doing that, starting with like static algorithm-based technologies. So in what that means is you have a data set that you program one time with a bunch of rules, and then it uses that all the time and it doesn't change at all. And then we had technology where the algorithm could change and adjust a little bit, but on a finite data set. And then finally in 2016 was the first cloud-based big data continuously learning, like continuously getting smarter and smarter. And I was leading the team that we were the first in the world to have an FDA approval for that. And I was leading the commercialization of that, which was absolutely fascinating.
Was this for like doctors you were using it to manage patient data or
it was
research?
Yeah, it was a clinical application, cardiac MR, like 4D flow, which is a specific MRI technology that looks like blood flow in your heart and looks for abnormality in the blood flow in your heart. And even then, it was a combination of a number of technologies coming together, like networks that were fast enough and processing power that was enough to be able to process that data. And then the artificial intelligence science being mature enough to be able to understand what to do with all that complex information. And so that was the first application of its kind. And then there was a respiratory application and a neuro application. And I have also experience with a number of applications for breast cancer detection as well.
Like
Mammograms, breast MRIs, and breast ultrasounds. And now the combination of using information from mammograms and ultrasounds and MRIs all at the same time.
Right.
Which is fascinating and a very, very complex problem to solve.
Yeah. So it's like the computers can just digest like swaths of information now.
That is a great way to say it.
In order to do something like find cancer in an MRI.
Yeah, not only find it, but to be able to classify it, because there's different types of breast cancer. There's different types of breast cancer. So they can also classify it. And then based on the characterization of the tissue, they can now use predictive analysis on how likely this abnormality will be to be very invasive, or very life-threatening, or not so life-threatening and more of a watch and wait.
Yeah. And the technology can now remember like previous data sets and what that meant. So it can like recognize it if it comes up again.
Absolutely. And this is where the patient data comes in, because it can remember down to that particular patient. And not only do that, but bring in your lab work and your blood work and other medical things that are going on, which is amazing as Ayurvedic practitioners, in that now you've got a more holistic approach that's being enabled by technology. The average human brain could not remember. And in fact, when these technologies were being launched, there was a very amazingly gifted neuroradiologist that, that said, like, it's pattern recognition.
Yeah.
And at any given time, there's just data that you just don't remember as part of the pattern. And artificial intelligence can help us remember all the data sets we need to be remembering.
Right. Yeah. Ooh, that's so interesting.
So you before we started recording, we were talking about kind of the amount of burnout that you
Yes.
saw among clinicians and
Yes.
researchers, right? And so that's part of how you ended up now working also in wellness?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So one of the startups that I was working for was working on this amazing platform technology in information technology. So a software platform in healthcare that would have been the first of its kind that could manage data associated with clinical research trials that also included medical imaging results, that all in a digital form, which was unbelievable and impact millions and millions and millions of lives, not just in North America, but all over the world. And because of my yoga and Ayurveda knowledge and being a practitioner, I had a lot of skills that could help sustain some of these stressful situations and big questions and, the discernment of what to do, accessing parts of myself. And a lot of the engineers that I worked with, just because of the nature of how we're brought up. And I knew this from, teammates in college of how they,
Right.
how they manage things. These worlds were not often coming together. And yet the engineers were really struggling with stress. And the healthcare providers were struggling with stress, especially about repetitive tasks that were not fully utilizing their capabilities.
Right. Like charting at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Notes that administer all these administrative tasks. And the engineers that had these brilliant people that had brilliant, amazing ideas that could have really meaningful impact in the world. Innovation was getting stunted. And so that was really where I turned to being super passionate about how can we make some of these ancient wisdom traditions more accessible to more people so that we're reducing burnout, we're allowing innovation to thrive. And then anyone that wants to do something awesome in the world can now use tech, so that people that aren't super technically savvy can use technology to help enable and empower them to do whatever it is that they want, either in their daily life or in their work life.
Which that's it. What you just said is what like kind of hooked me into starting to learn with you, because I was in a period in my life where I realized that as an entrepreneur, I was not going to be able to keep up.
Yeah.
If I didn't learn how to use AI in my business, just for things like sending newsletters or, managing emails, finances, there's just all the admin tasks.
Absolutely.
Right. And I felt really intimidated by it. And then I would hear you say something like, oh, this is for everybody, like we can do this. So if we have people listening who feel like me, very intimidated and scared, right? What are some ways that we can, as you say, you're interested in using AI to help people live the wellness lifestyle? Like, how can we do that?
Okay, that's such a good question. And first, I want to say that although there have been advancements over the last, decade, I would say, because Siri is actually the first commercially available AI technology for everyday life. And if you think about, Siri has gotten smarter over the years, but Siri was very back and forth task oriented. And with the introduction of technologies like ChatGPT, which is a generative AI technology, this is really important because it did two things. Number one, now computers can think on their own versus specifically being programmed to behave in a particular way. And then secondly, you don't need to know a computer coding language anymore. The coding language is now human English.
Right. Yeah.
And so with human English, and anybody or whatever language, the human language is the coding language now. And so, because one of the great uses for AI is to become a tutor for a particular language that you want to use. So whether you're speaking Spanish or Arabic or English or whatever it is, the conversation that you're having, the relationship that you're having with the technology is in human language. And that's a huge shift and why we're having this conversation, and also why this is so accessible now. So in your everyday, what does this mean for everyday life? Okay. So one of the ways I've used it that I love using it
is it
ChatGPT,
Yeah.
but AI in general, because there's actually four major engines: ChatGPT, Gemini, which is Google's engine, Meta, which is now has an AI engine, and then Microsoft also has an engine.
Which my friend actually just used a Meta. She's using Meta AI on her phone. And she made a flyer for a barbecue.
Yep.
That was amazing. You know, it was like a lobster with a sign, and she got it. The sign said, like, you know, her address, like family barbecue. You know,
isn't that so cool? Yeah. So, but because we're talking about the ancient wisdom traditions, some of the Ayurvedic recipes, for example, either A, have an ingredient in them that might not have translated so well, you know, or you have 7 of the 8 ingredients and you are wondering what to do about that 8th ingredient. And say you went to your Ayurvedic health counselor and they put you on a Vata pacifying diet. And this could either tell you, here's a substitute that is also aligned with a Vata pacifying diet, or here are 2 or 3 other foods that have the same, you know, the same qualities or properties.
Yeah.
Another way is you could take that Ayurvedic recipe, take a picture of it, put it into your AI engine, and create a shopping list from it.
That's amazing. Yeah. So it can read the picture.
It can totally read the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. There was something else you were talking about traveling. It'll translate a menu for you.
Yes.
In another language, right?
Yes.
That's helpful. I kind of need that in this country sometimes. You know, all these weird cheeses and things. I don't know what they are.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of my favorites. Another one is, so you have this amazing large data set that has billions and billions and billions or more of data points that have now all come together and can process really fast. And part of that is people that we know that live in this world that may be particularly brilliant on a particular topic, and you don't have access ever to have a direct conversation with them because of all the content that's available, everything that they've said publicly, news articles. You can now ask your AI engine to be that person and tell it that you want to have a conversation, you want to brainstorm with it, or you want to have a conversation. You could ask Warren Buffett to have a conversation about having $10,000 and how you might want to invest it.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And now you have access to, and because the computer can think also, it really picks up some of the cognitive patterns that Warren Buffett has based on all this data on what kind of principles he would tell someone.
The data being like, say, he was on the Tonight Show or something like that.
Correct.
And so AI can listen to the interview.
And any publicly available data.
And anything we've heard on the radio, seen on TV, read in a magazine or newspaper. Social media, no, though. It's different.
Meta has access to social media data.
Yeah. So you have to go through that engine.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's one of the, I feel very cool things about learning is because many of these programs are free, you know, many of these engines are free. ChatGPT 3.5 is free. Gemini is free in some capacities, or at least has a trial. Meta AI is free. You can learn how those engines are thinking by asking it, you know, to do different tasks or different questions. And across the board, AI is a great brainstormer.
Right.
A great a great place to start. So if you're stuck, if you're a writer and you're stuck, if you are producing social media content and you're stuck, if you are needing to have a difficult conversation with a loved one and are stuck on how am I going to articulate this in a way that is not going to be shutting the other person down, for example.
Right.
ChatGPT can be a great, or an AI engine can be a great brainstormer to help you kind of sort that out. Wow. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys listening are going to like this one, because one of the things that you said that really got me is you were like, you know, say you have a bunch of broccoli in your refrigerator. You ask it, say I want a soup. Yeah, I want it to be seasonal and give me a recipe. And I've done that since you mentioned it. And like it comes up, there'll be like 10 broccoli related recipes, and then I'll be like, oh, this is great, thanks. But I want it to be a soup. And then it'll just give me like 10 broccoli soup recipes. I'll be like, no, I don't have any milk, So and then it'll give me like vegan ones. It's pretty amazing.
It's amazing.
And I think the being sort of stuck in the kitchen, which I think is something a lot of people listening to this podcast know that feeling, is actually really helpful.
Really helpful.
Yeah.
And helps you sustain your health and wellness objectives when it comes to supporting yourself from a nutrient, from a nutrition. And that is so awesome, right? Because that decision point that you had, sometimes you think, oh, this is just too hard, and go to reach for something that might not be as supportive.
Right. Because you just don't know what to do with all that broccoli. That's why it's still sitting there, So I found it really helpful. I was like, ooh, casserole, all these different things.
I've also found it like if you, say you rent a family house in the summertime or something, and always the last couple days, you're trying to clean out the fridge. And you hate for all of that to go to waste, or, and you can say to your AI engine, we have peppers, we have asparagus, we have some leftover ground turkey. I've got these 4 spices. Can you please make 5 recipe suggestions of what I could do with this? And that's another variation of what you just said. And then everybody's happy. Your belly is happy.
Right.
You're happy that you didn't waste the food.
Yeah, exactly. And so these are all like really kind of simple, fun and sort of light ways to use it, which for me was, I feel like you started us that way.
Yeah.
Like fun and light, not trying to do like work things. And that was really smart and worked for me. Kind of also want to ask you about the dark side.
Oh, yeah.
The dark side. And I think especially with things like Ayurveda, yoga traditions, it's like this ancient technology that lives in the body, and in the subtle body and the prana and the cosmos. And like, here we are using computers for everything. I can't even cook without my computer now, So I know this is something you've put a lot of thought into. So tell us how you look at this.
I have. And in the world of the ancient wisdom traditions, this is, especially modern AI, is the question. They're calling it the question of our lifetime. Is this going to ruin humanity? And the answer is yes, and in the sense that if you take some of the, the ancient wisdom philosophies about impermanence and the sentient nature of nature, things are changing. And this is one of those quantum leaps, and things are rapidly changing. So is it going to change the way we live and we work as we know it? Yes. Is it going to augment, if you want it to, in some ways, the way we interact with other humans? It can, but you can also choose for it not to. The Center for Humane Technology, which is based in Silicon Valley, is kind of the center of a lot of these technology questions because of what we found with the first generation of products that came out of the Persuasive Lab on the West Coast and have been shown to be quite detrimental to mental health. And the early social media data is also not great. And many companies have now put some boundaries in place for you, like on your iPhone. You can create do not disturbs and focus times and those types of things. So the and part of that, so things are changing. And as humans, this is not going to go away either.
Right.
And so getting really clear about your values and your intentions, how you are using the technology, is really important for your own system, and keeping and staying true to yourself. And then, like when you're in relation with anything, if you're in constant connection with your own truest values and in alignment, whatever you're in relationship with or interaction with, if you're keeping those present and top of mind, which are part of the skills we learn in Ayurveda and yoga and mindfulness, then you're creating a healthy relationship with that technology. And one of the reasons I particularly like OpenAI is that the founder, Sam Altman, is being mentored by Jack Kornfield. And so for a lot of your audience, Jack Kornfield is a wonderful, wonderful ethical leader in this space. And there is a very conscious effort to contemplate the impact of humanity with bringing these technologies to the world. And in fact, when you use ChatGPT specifically, when you bring benevolence and compassion and empathy to your interaction with it, it rewards you. And it also will shut down if you give it too many prompts in a particular amount of time, it will shut down. And for someone that's in wonderful service to the world and using it in a benevolent way, sometimes that could be a little frustrating because you want to get something done.
Yes.
Also, it protects your own ability of how much information can you really digest at one time.
Yep, it's true.
Number one. And number two, for anyone that would potentially be using it for malintended ways, it will create a shutdown for it. Like an internal shutdown, so that it doesn't just continue in the loop. And I think things like that are really, really important. One of the things that you said earlier about your own business, when you think about like using it in your business, is that, and one of the chiefs at Mass Gen actually said this years ago, and is largely thought of, like, especially in business, if you don't start to adopt understanding, at least in your own relationship with AI, your competitors will.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you will be left behind no matter what age you are. And so like I even, my parents are now in their, late 70s, early 80s, and they are interested in AI, even for a very different intention for application, but they don't want to be left behind. What's going to happen over the next, and they're not trying to invent the next amazing innovation, but they want to be able to use it to create more ease in their daily lives.
Right.
And that's amazing. And anybody can use it for that. So the potential is unbelievable. And the more people that are using it for benevolent type applications, it is also going to feed it more benevolent intentioned data that will hopefully keep the balance in that side of the malintended ways. And that's really, really, I believe, important in the evolution of this technology.
Right. Like it's an energy field that is absorbing what we're giving it.
Yep.
So if there's more people positively engaging,
yes,
then we're building these engines globally that are positive.
Yes.
Right. And will feed positive things to humanity for time to come.
Yes.
In the future.
Absolutely. And then it's also creating efficiencies for people, like we're a time-starved, we're time-scarce society right now. It is creating some efficiencies, like your example of all of us look at open the fridge, what am I going to do?
I know.
And 20 minutes later, you're still wondering, what am I going to do? And if you had a tool that could give you a couple suggestions, that in 30 seconds, you've just created 19 minutes and 30 seconds to go for a walk outside.
Yes, right. So you could ask it to be Kate O'Donnell and give you a soup recipe and then save time.
Yes.
Right. So I think part of what you're saying is that because AI can help streamline some of our daily admin tasks, we do end up with more time for self-care.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah. And it's up to you to make that decision.
Yep.
To use that time for self-care. Yeah. Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, which is the maker of ChatGPT, I love his intention of, he really feels that it's going to create so much time for people that they can sit and meditate the big questions of life. That may be a little bit altruistic.
That's
I love the intention of that.
Yes.
I love the intention of that. It may be a little bit altruistic in hope, but in our daily lives, say you have 20 minutes or 45 minutes, to extra that because of the repetitive tasks that are now automated, that you can spend on self-care.
Right.
Yeah. And or spend on whatever it is that's going to really nourish your being. And then also part of this ethics conversation is obviously plagiarism. What happens to intellectual property?
Yeah.
How does that evolve? All of those things. And what is both really exciting and really terrifying is the generative AI technologies that can think for themselves that are out right now are actually the least intelligent that they will ever be.
Yeah. Right. Like it only kind of will get
It's
smarter.
only going to get smarter and smarter. And yet, how many times have you been in meditation or in flow in a yoga class or, in some sense of contemplative headspace, being space, whatever that is, you're going for a hike and an idea comes to you
Yeah.
from the cosmos, or you know what I mean, for whatever it lands, like Elizabeth Gilbert, like Big Med, it lands on you.
Yeah.
That is not going to change. And so what AI can do is help you bring that to life. It used to, even 5 years ago, it cost $200,000, $500,000 to have somebody build an app for you if you weren't a computer scientist. That could support wonderful things like diabetes prevention, or whatever it is. And that was limiting to a lot of people that had really great ideas that didn't know how to get started. And now, things like that are possible for a magnitude less of actual, finances. And you can use all your personalities in AI to help you brainstorm about how to bring those things to life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how positive you are about it. And I think personally, I had my blinders on for a while, and then I was like, no, I'm not going to be able to keep up. And I don't want to be left behind either on something that is being integrated into sort of all of the softwares that I use, you know? So if this is sounding good to people and they kind of want to do what I did and jump in and get some coaching from you, what's the best way to do that?
That's a great question. So I have a number of offerings. Thegearshift.com is where you can find me, or at thegearshift on social. Because of the experience that you and your peers had, there's a Get Started course, which is going to be available all the time. And that is really going to teach you the simple fundamentals.
Like how to prompt.
What are these tools?
Right.
And focus on things in everyday life so that you can really start to get acquainted and get in relationship with this technology as a whole. Learn how to trust it. It's just like a person, like learn how to trust, learn how it thinks, learn how it operates. And then Amplify with AI happens twice a year. It'll launch in October. You can get on the waiting list. And that is really designed for aspiring entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and small business owners to learn how to, in a group setting, learn how to integrate AI into your business. And then I have limited availability for 2 tracks of a 6-month one-on-one mentorship. That's a minimum of 6 months so that you can really start to accomplish some goals. And for 1 track is for people that have an idea and want to launch. And then the other track is for people that have an existing business and want to integrate AI into their business processes or into whatever it is that they do to help empower and amplify and grow.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should also say that whatever goal you have, whether you want to have time freedom, financial freedom, location freedom, this can enable any of that. That's part of your intention. And then as you experience, it's sprinkled in with some ancient wisdom principles to help you get there.
Right. It knows some Ayurveda talk. And I think they're also, you can research some of the classical texts now, thanks to AI. When I write these books, I spend a lot of time especially just with the books, like going through the classics, you know, so now you can actually search.
Absolutely. And I love, the Charaka Samrita, especially. I'm sure that
because it's all over the place.
It's all over the place. And there's so many ways that you can translate what it
Yes.
says.
True.
And you're looking for the essence of what it's trying to say, which is not literal translation, which is not
Yes.
literal translation. And that's something that, because now we have something that can think on its own, it can kind of tap into a little bit of what's the essence of what we're trying to
Right.
accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's so this is just so awesome because it creates more accessibility, and it saves you probably hours and hours
Right.
of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll still sit there with the book sometimes.
Yeah.
There's something about that, having the books in my hands,
absolutely.
that I'll still do. But so this is amazing. I'm really happy to just introduce people to this. And from you, I like the way that you go about it.
Thank you.
It feels very holistic to me. How do we integrate this thing that I think is a little intimidating and scary,
Absolutely.
into our lives? So as we get to know you, how do you feel about 3 rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So Julia, what is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I look for the sunrise.
Oh, so you get up around the sunrise?
Yeah, or a little before.
Yeah.
I love that, like when the birds start and it's almost first light. This time of year, especially in New England, it's a little
early. Yeah. Okay, so you go and find.
But getting that
sun.
sensory,
Yeah.
input in is really amazing. Yeah.
What's the first thing that goes in the mouth?
Water.
Water.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes it has lemon in it, sometimes not. But water, right, like right on the bedside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Water. And then oil pulling after that.
Ooh, yeah, love oil pulling. Yeah, we'll do an episode about that, guys. And how about non-negotiable wind down routine?
Legs up the wall.
Legs up the wall. I do that one too.
Right in my bed too. Like literally, like
Yep,
I had to make
turn
it
around.
accessible. Just legs up the wall, wind down, even if it's 5 minutes. I try 15 minutes because I notice that it really helps with the sleep quality. But legs up the wall.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was so fun. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to where everyone takes this.
Great.
Mhm.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.